He was hungry. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. But when this black boy saw an elderly couple shaking in the cold, he made a choice that would change his life forever. Because the very next morning, a stranger knocked on his door, and nothing was ever the same again. Before we continue, subscribe now if you believe kindness still matters. And if you want to watch the full emotional story without interruption, the link is waiting for you below.
Marcus Johnson was only 12 years old, but life had already taught him lessons most adults never learn. Every morning, Marcus tied his shoes the same way, carefully, slowly, as if rushing might make things worse. The sneakers were old, the soles were thin, rain leaked in when the streets were wet, but Marcus never complained, because complaining doesn't fill an empty stomach. Marcus lived in a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building most people didn't even notice. Paint peeling, lights flickering, a stairwell that smelled like dust and time. But to Marcus, it was home. That morning, Marcus woke up before his alarm, not because he was rested, because his stomach hurt. He rolled onto his side, pulling the blanket tighter around his thin frame. The room was quiet, too quiet. His mom had already left for work. She always did. 2 jobs, long shifts, tired feet. Before leaving, she had kissed his forehead and whispered, "I'll try to bring dinner tonight, okay?" Marcus nodded. He always nodded. He stood up and looked at the kitchen. Empty counter, empty fridge, 1 small paper bag sitting neatly on the table. Inside it was his only meal for the entire day. A sandwich wrapped in foil, 1 red apple, a small carton of milk. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, not touching it, thinking. He could eat it now, but what if he got hungry later? What if his mom came home late again? Marcus carefully folded the bag and placed it inside his backpack. Save it, he told himself. Saving food had become a habit. At school, Marcus was quiet, not because he didn't have thoughts, because he didn't want questions. When lunchtime came, the cafeteria filled with noise, trays clattering, kids laughing, the smell of hot food floating through the air. Marcus sat at the end of the table. He opened his backpack slightly, just to make sure the bag was still there. It was. He closed it again. A boy across from him laughed. "You're not eating?" Marcus smiled politely. "I already ate," he lied. The lie didn't hurt. Hunger did. By the time school ended, Marcus's legs felt weak, but he still walked, because walking was free, and bus money wasn't. The sun was starting to set. The air was getting colder. Marcus hugged his hoodie closer to his chest. The backpack felt heavier than it should have, not because of the food, because of the decision inside it. As he walked past the bus stop, that's when he saw them, 2 figures sitting close together, an elderly couple. The man leaned forward, coughing quietly. The woman rubbed his pack gently. Their coats were thin. Their hands were shaking. Marcus slowed down. His heart did something strange. He told himself not to look, because looking meant caring, and caring meant choosing, but his eyes wouldn't move away. The elderly woman noticed him first. She smiled, a tired smile, the kind people give when they don't want to ask for help. "Good evening, sweetheart," she said softly. Marcus swallowed. His stomach growled loudly, too loudly. He stopped walking. The cold wind passed between them. Marcus stood there, frozen. He felt the weight of his backpack, the paper bag inside, his dinner, his safety, his comfort. In his head, 2 voices fought. One said, "You're just a kid, you need it." The other said, "So do they." Marcus looked at their faces, wrinkled, tired, proud. People who had lived long lives and still found themselves waiting at a bus stop with nothing to eat. Marcus slowly took off his backpack. His hands shook, not from the cold, from the choice. He unzipped the bag and reached inside.
He pulled out the sandwich, then the apple, then the milk. Each item felt heavier than the last. He stepped closer. Excuse me," he said quietly. The elderly man looked up. "Yes, son?" Marcus held out the food. "You can have this. It's my dinner, but I can wait." Silence. The woman's eyes filled with tears instantly. The man stood up slowly. "Son, are you sure?" he said, voice breaking. "Yes, sir. Please take it." The woman reached for his hands. They were warm, gentle. "You don't know what this means," she whispered. Marcus smiled. "I hope it helps." And then, before they could say anything else, Marcus turned around and walked away. His stomach was empty, but his heart felt full for the first time in a long while. And Marcus had no idea that this moment, this choice, was about to change his life forever.
The boy disappeared into the evening crowd, just like that. No name, no questions, no expectation. Only the sound of his footsteps fading into the cold air. The elderly woman sat frozen for a moment, still holding the sandwich in her hands. It felt warm, not just from the food, but from the kindness. She looked at her husband. His eyes were wet. He hadn't cried in years. "Did that really just happen?" she whispered. Her husband nodded slowly. "That child gave us his dinner." They looked down at the paper bag. So small, so ordinary, yet it felt heavier than anything they had carried in years. The man cleared his throat, fighting back tears. "He didn't even hesitate," he said. "Did you see his face?" She nodded. He looked hungry. The word hung between them. Hungry, not just for food, but for hope. They had been sitting at that bus stop for nearly 40 minutes. The bus was late again. It always was. Their legs ached. The wind cut through their coats. But neither of them complained, because complaining doesn't change much when you've lived long enough. The woman slowly unwrapped the sandwich. Her hands trembled, not from age, from emotion. She broke it in half, handed one piece to her husband. "Eat," she said gently. He hesitated. "What if he needs it?" She shook her head. She already gave it. They ate quietly. Each bite tasted different. Not richer, not better, just meaningful. The man closed his eyes. He remembered something, a long time ago, when he was young, strong, working double shifts, helping strangers when he could. He never imagined one day a child would be helping him instead. The woman wiped her mouth carefully. "We raised our son to be kind," she said softly. Her husband nodded. "Seems like someone raised that boy the same way." They sat there in silence. The bus finally arrived, but neither of them rushed to stand. They needed a moment. When they got home, the apartment lights were dim. The man sat heavily in his chair. The woman placed the empty bag on the table. She stared at it, longer than she needed to. "We can't just let this go," she said suddenly. Her husband looked up. "What do you mean?" "That boy gave us something he didn't have," she said. "We need to do something." The man sighed. "We don't even know his name." She smiled faintly. "But our son can find out." She picked up the phone. Her fingers moved slowly, but her voice was firm. When their son answered, she said, "Something happened tonight." And she told him everything, every detail, every word, every tear. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then their son spoke, quietly. "You said he was a black boy, about 12? Yes. Worn sneakers? Yes." Another pause. "I'll find him." That night, the elderly man lay awake, thinking about the boy, about the choice he made, about how easy it is to forget kindness still exists
until it shows up in the hands of a child. The woman whispered into the darkness, "I hope he didn't go to bed hungry." Her husband reached for her hand. "Tomorrow," he said, "tomorrow something will change." And while Marcus slept, unaware of what he had set in motion, a decision was already being made, one that would change his life forever.
That night, Marcus climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor slowly. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because he was tired, but because his stomach was empty. The hallway lights flickered as he reached apartment 3B. He stopped for a moment, listening. No sound. That meant his mom wasn't home yet. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out the bent key, and unlocked the door quietly. The apartment was small, 2 rooms, 1 couch with a tear in the arm, a table that wobbled if you leaned on it. But it was warm, and warm was enough. Marcus dropped his backpack by the door and walked into the kitchen. He opened the fridge, out of habit, not hope. Inside, a half bottle of water, some mustard packets, and an empty shelf where dinner usually sat. He closed it gently. Marcus sat at the table. He placed his hands flat in front of him. They were still shaking a little, not from hunger, from what he had done. He thought about the elderly woman's smile, the man's trembling hands, how they had looked at him like he mattered. Marcus swallowed hard. He reached into his backpack, pulled out the empty paper bag, folded it carefully, placed it on the table. For some reason, he couldn't throw it away. Hours passed slowly. The clock ticked louder than usual. Marcus tried to do his homework, but the words blurred together. His stomach growled again. He ignored it. He always did. The door finally opened close to midnight. His mom stepped inside. Angela Johnson. Tired eyes, soft voice, strong hands. She dropped her purse slowly and leaned against the wall for a second. Marcus stood up immediately. "Hi, Mom." She smiled when she saw him. That smile made everything worth it. "Hey, baby," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I'm late." Marcus shook his head. "It's okay." She kissed his forehead and headed toward the kitchen. She stopped. Her eyes went to the table, then the fridge, then back to Marcus. "Did you eat?" she asked gently. Marcus hesitated. Just a second. Too long. Angela sat down across from him. She knew that pause. Mothers always do. "Marcus, did you eat today?" Marcus looked down. "I was saving it." "Saving what?" Silence. He finally spoke. "I gave my dinner to some people." Angela froze. Her heart skipped. "What people?" "An old couple," Marcus said softly. "They were cold and hungry." Angela covered her mouth. "Marcus," she whispered, "you were hungry too." He nodded. "I know." Her eyes filled with tears, not sadness, pride mixed with pain. She reached across the table and held his hands. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marcus shrugged. "You work hard. I didn't want you to worry." That broke her. Angela stood up suddenly. She went to the cabinet, pulled out a small pot. Inside, a can of soup she had been saving. She poured it into the pot, turned on the stove. "We'll share," she said firmly. "Always." Marcus watched her. The steam rose slowly. The smell filled the room. They sat on the couch with 2 bowls between them, half for her, half for him. Marcus ate slowly. Angela pretended she wasn't hungry. After dinner, Marcus rested his head on her shoulder. "Mom?" "Yes, baby?" "Do you think I did the right thing?" Angela didn't answer right away. She thought carefully. Then she said, "Kindness is never wrong, even when it's hard." She tucked him into bed, pulled the blanket up to his chin. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Marcus smiled. His eyes closed almost instantly. Angela sat beside him for a long time,
watching him sleep, thinking, worrying, praying. She whispered softly, "Please let that boy be okay." She didn't know that somewhere across town, someone was already looking for him, and as Marcus slept, unaware of the storm his kindness had stirred, fate was already moving.
That same night, while Marcus slept peacefully for the first time in days, across the city, a man sat alone in his office. The lights were still on, not because he had to work, but because he couldn't stop thinking. Daniel Whitmore stared out of the window. Tall buildings, endless traffic, so many people. And yet, all he could see was the image his parents had described. A black boy, thin hoodie, old shoes, a paper bag with dinner inside. Given away. Daniel leaned back in his chair slowly. He had closed billion-dollar deals, negotiated with powerful people, handled pressure most never experience. But this felt heavier. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "He didn't hesitate, Daniel. He gave us his food like it was nothing, like it was normal." Daniel closed his eyes. He knew it wasn't normal, not anymore. He picked up his phone, called his assistant. "I need a favor," he said calmly. "No paperwork, no publicity." There was a pause. "Find a young boy, about 12, black, lives near the east bus route, wears worn sneakers." Another pause. "And Daniel?" "Yes." "Why?" Daniel answered softly, "Because kindness like that doesn't survive unless someone protects it." The search didn't start with databases. It started with people. Bus drivers, store owners, school staff. Daniel drove himself, no chauffeur, no security, just questions. At the first bus stop, he stood quietly, watching, listening. He asked an elderly woman sweeping nearby, "Have you seen a young boy who comes through here often?" She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "Good kid, quiet." Daniel's heart tightened. "Does he live nearby?" She pointed down the street. "Third-floor building, old one." Daniel thanked her, got back in the car, and sat there for a moment. He thought about his own childhood. Warm meals, safe bed, parents always home. He had never known hunger, not once. And yet, the boy who did gave his food away. Daniel whispered to himself, "Who raises a child like that?" The answer came quietly. Someone who has nothing but love. At the school, the secretary hesitated. Rules, privacy, boundaries. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply said, "He helped my parents when no one else did." That was enough. She sighed. "Marcus Johnson," she said. "Good student, never causes trouble." Daniel nodded. "Thank you." That night, Daniel went home, but he didn't sleep. He prepared. Not documents, not contracts, but intentions. He wrote a letter, slowly, carefully. Each word mattered. He folded it neatly, placed it inside an envelope, then another. At dawn, Daniel stood by his window, watching the city wake up, thinking about a boy who would wake up hungry again, unaware that his life was about to change. Daniel picked up the envelope, took a deep breath, and said quietly, "It's time." And as the sun rose over the city, a knock was already on its way to a door where hope lived quietly, waiting to be answered. Morning came quietly. No alarms, no rush, just the soft light of dawn slipping through thin curtains. Marcus woke up slowly,
his stomach still empty, but his heart calm. He stretched, rubbed his eyes, and listened. The apartment was silent. That meant his mom was already up. Angela Johnson stood in the kitchen, coffee in her hand, uniform half-buttoned. She looked tired, but peaceful. Marcus stepped closer. "Morning, Mom." She smiled. "Morning, baby." They sat together quietly. No words, just presence. Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound cut through the room, sharp, unexpected. Angela froze. Marcus looked up. They both knew something was wrong. No one ever knocked. Angela walked to the door slowly. Marcus followed a few steps behind. She opened it halfway. A tall man stood there, clean coat, calm posture, kind eyes. He smiled gently. "Good morning. I'm sorry to disturb you." Angela held the door tighter. "Can I help you?" The man looked past her, saw Marcus. His expression softened instantly. "Is that Marcus Johnson?" Marcus felt his chest tighten. He stepped forward. "Yes, sir?" The man nodded. "My name is Daniel Whitmore." He paused. "My parents told me what you did last night." Marcus's face went pale. He thought, "I'm in trouble." Angela turned toward Marcus. "What's he talking about?" Marcus swallowed. I gave my dinner to an old couple." Angela closed her eyes, not angry, afraid. Daniel raised his hand gently. "Please," he said. "He didn't do anything wrong." He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "My parents were cold, hungry. You helped them when no one else did." His voice shook. "That tells me everything I need to know about you." He handed the envelope to Marcus. Marcus didn't take it. Angela did. Her hands trembled. She opened it slowly. Inside, a letter, a check, and a folded document. Angela's breath caught. Tears streamed down her face. Daniel continued, "This covers groceries for your family and a fund for Marcus's education. All of it." Angela sank into the chair. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel looked at Marcus. "Because kindness like his changes the world, and the world rarely gives back." He knelt slightly, met Marcus at eye level. "But today, it does." Marcus couldn't breathe. Tears rolled down his face. "I didn't do it for this," he whispered. Daniel smiled. "I know." Angela wrapped her arms around her son, held him tightly. For the first time in years, she felt relief. Daniel stood. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Stay kind, Marcus." He stepped back. The door closed softly. Marcus stood there, changed, forever. One knock, one choice, one life, changed, forever.
The door closed slowly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a soft click. But everything inside that apartment had changed forever. Marcus stood still, the envelope still in his hands, like it might disappear if he moved too fast. Angela wiped her tears. Then she laughed, a small broken laugh she hadn't made in years. "Marcus," she whispered, "come sit with me." They sat at the table, the same table that wobbled, the same table where she once counted coins for groceries. Angela opened the envelope again, read the letter slowly, each word heavier than the last. Her hands shook, not from fear, from relief. This is real," she said softly. Marcus nodded. He seemed kind. Angela smiled through tears. "Just like you." They sat in silence. Then Marcus spoke. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Angela looked at her son, really looked. She held his face gently. "Yes," she said firmly,
We are. Later that day, Angela went to the grocery store, not rushing, not calculating every dollar. She walked slowly down the aisles, picked up fresh fruit, bread that wasn't on sale, milk without counting coins. At home, Marcus cleaned the apartment, not because he was told, because he felt hopeful. For the first time, hope didn't feel dangerous. That night, they ate a full meal together. Angela cooked carefully. Marcus laughed. The sound felt new. Angela spoke softly. I want you to promise me something. Marcus nodded. Never stop being who you are. He nodded again. Later, Marcus lay in bed, full, warm, safe. He thought about the elderly couple, about the bus stop, about the knock. He whispered into the dark, Thank you. And while the world outside kept moving, inside one small apartment, life had finally slowed down, just enough to begin again.
Time has a quiet way of proving what really matters. Days turned into months, months turned into years, and that small apartment on the 3rd floor, once filled with worry, slowly filled with laughter. Marcus grew taller. His shoes fit. His backpack felt lighter, but the kindness in his heart never changed. Angela worked fewer hours, not because she became lazy, but because she could finally breathe. She came home before sunset, cooked dinner without rushing, sat with her son at the table, and smiled more than she ever thought possible. Marcus never forgot the bus stop, never forgot the cold wind, never forgot the choice. In school, teachers noticed him, not just his grades, but his character, the way he helped others, the way he listened. Years later, Marcus stood in front of a mirror, wearing a suit, not borrowed, not second-hand, his own. Angela adjusted his tie, her hands steady, her eyes proud. You ready? She asked. Marcus nodded. I think so. At the auditorium, rows of families sat quietly. Names were called, applause filled the room. Then, Marcus Johnson. The applause was louder. Marcus walked across the stage, accepted his scholarship. He looked out into the crowd, saw his mom crying, saw an elderly couple smiling, saw a familiar man in the back, Daniel Whitmore. Daniel nodded. Marcus nodded back. No words needed. Years later still, Marcus stood at a bus stop, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. An elderly woman sat nearby, shivering. Marcus reached into his bag, pulled out food, and smiled. Because kindness doesn't end, it echoes. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more stories that restore faith in humanity. And if you want to watch the full emotional journey from beginning to end, the link is waiting for you below. Remember, one small act of kindness can change a life forever.